Review the electrical bid and security subcontract carefully to identify the scope of work and items included. Compare the original bid to the itemized deduct provided by the subcontractor. Contact the security subcontractor and state your concerns regarding the incomplete deduct. Request a revised deduct that includes all items originally included in their bid scope. Explain that the plans and specs provided at the time of bidding were complete and should have been considered. If the subcontractor refuses to provide a complete deduct, attempt to negotiate a fair resolution. Consider offering a partial deduct for the items that the subcontractor claims were not bid in the first place, while insisting on a deduct for the remaining items. Keep a record of all communications and correspondence with the subcontractor. If necessary, send a written notice stating your concerns and the items that you believe were omitted from the deduct. If you are unable to resolve the issue directly with the subcontractor, consider consulting with an attorney or mediator. They can provide legal guidance and facilitate a resolution that protects your interests. Be aware of any applicable statute of limitations that may limit the time you have to take legal action. Review the contracts to understand the consequences of a breach of contract, such as damages or termination. The delay caused by the deduct dispute could potentially impact the overall project schedule. Consider the potential costs and consequences of any delays. It is important to handle this dispute professionally and avoid damaging the reputation of either party. When reviewing the contract, look for specific clauses that address changes in scope or deductions from the original contract price. These clauses typically outline the procedure for requesting and approving changes, including the required documentation and approvals. Pay close attention to any language that defines how pricing for deductive changes should be calculated. This may involve using the original bid prices, market rates, or a negotiated agreement. In addition to the contract, review all relevant project documents such as the original plans and specifications, addenda, and any written communications between the parties. These documents can provide valuable context and help to clarify the scope of work that was originally intended. When communicating with the subcontractor, it is important to be clear and concise in your communication. State your concerns in a professional and respectful manner, and provide specific examples of items that you believe were omitted from the deduct. It may be helpful to provide the subcontractor with a written list of the items in question, along with supporting documentation. Request a written response from the subcontractor outlining their position on each item. This will help to ensure that there is a clear record of the communication and that both parties are on the same page. If the subcontractor refuses to provide a complete deduct, it may be necessary to negotiate a compromise. Be prepared to explain your reasoning and to offer counter-proposals. Consider factors such as the cost of the omitted items, the impact on the project schedule, and the potential for future disputes. If negotiations are unsuccessful, consider seeking the assistance of a neutral third party, such as a mediator. A mediator can help to facilitate communication between the parties and to identify potential areas of agreement. Keep a detailed record of all communications, including dates, times, and the names of the individuals involved. Retain copies of all relevant documents such as contracts, plans, specifications, and correspondence. If a dispute cannot be resolved through negotiation or mediation, it may be necessary to pursue legal action. Consult with an attorney to discuss your options and to determine the best course of action. Be aware of any applicable statute of limitations, which may limit the time you have to file a lawsuit. Failing to act within the statute of limitations could bar your claim. Before commencing legal action, carefully consider the potential costs and benefits. Litigation can be expensive and time-consuming, and there is no guarantee of success. Explore alternative dispute resolution methods such as arbitration before pursuing litigation. Arbitration can be a less expensive and more efficient way to resolve disputes than litigation. Review the contract for provisions regarding attorneys' fees and costs. Some contracts may provide that the prevailing party in a dispute is entitled to recover their attorney's fees and costs from the losing party. Document the impact of the deduct dispute on the project schedule. Delays caused by the dispute could result in additional costs such as extended overhead and lost productivity. Mitigate the impact of the dispute and the project schedule by taking steps to expedite the resolution process. Consider the potential impact of the dispute on your business reputation. Unresolved disputes can damage relationships with subcontractors, owners, and other stakeholders. Strive to resolve the dispute in a professional and amicable manner. Maintain open communication with all parties involved and be transparent about your position. Seek to understand the other party's perspective and be willing to compromise. By taking these steps, you can increase the likelihood of resolving the dispute successfully and minimizing the negative impact on your business. In the review of contracts and documents, focus not only on the original scope but also on any change order procedures. A well-defined change order process is essential for managing modifications to the work and associated costs. Determine if the owner's decision to eliminate the security system constitutes a change in scope and if it triggers the change order process outlined in the contract. The contract should specify the method for valuing deductive changes, such as using the original bid price, actual costs, or a negotiated amount. Scrutinize the subcontractor's itemized deduct to ensure that it aligns with the contract's valuation method. If the subcontractor claims that certain items were not included in their original bid, request documentation to support their claim, such as their internal cost estimates or quotations from suppliers. Review the project specifications to determine the specific requirements for the security system, including the types of equipment, installation methods, and performance standards. This will help you assess the subcontractor's scope of work and identify any discrepancies in their deduct. When communicating with the subcontractor, maintain a professional and respectful tone, even if you are frustrated with their position. Clearly explain your concerns regarding the incomplete deduct and provide specific examples of items that are missing. Ask the subcontractor to provide a written explanation for why they believe certain items were not included in their original bid. This will help you understand their perspective and identify any misunderstandings or errors. Document all communication with the subcontractor, including the date, time, participants, and key points discussed. This documentation will be valuable if the dispute escalates. In the negotiation phase, be prepared to make concessions, but also stand firm on items that you believe are rightfully included in the deduct. Consider offering a partial deduct for the disputed items, contingent upon the subcontractor providing documentation to support their claim that they were not included in their original bid. If the subcontractor is unwilling to negotiate in good faith, consider alternative dispute resolution methods such as mediation or arbitration. These methods can be less expensive and time-consuming than litigation. Before resorting to litigation, carefully weigh the costs and benefits. Litigation can be a lengthy and expensive process, and there is no guarantee of success. The statute of limitations for breach of contract claims varies from state to state. Be sure to consult with an attorney to determine the applicable statute of limitations in your jurisdiction. The contracts may specify the remedies available for breach of contract, such as damages, specific performance, or termination. Understand the potential consequences of a breach of contract by either party. The deduct dispute could potentially delay the project schedule and increase costs. Take steps to mitigate the impact of the dispute on the project schedule, such as reallocating resources or expediting the resolution process. Manage the dispute professionally and avoid damaging the reputation of either party. Seek to resolve the dispute in a fair and amicable manner while protecting your interests. When offering a partial deduct, ensure that the revised price accurately reflects the reduction in scope and that it is properly documented in a change order. This change order should be signed by both you and the subcontractor to avoid any future disputes. If the security system was integrated with other building systems, such as the fire alarm system or the building automation system, carefully consider the impact of removing the security system on these other systems. Ensure that the removal of the security system does not compromise the functionality or safety of these other systems. If the removal of the security system requires modifications to other building systems, include these modifications in the deduct calculation. consider the potential impact of the security system removal on the building's insurance coverage. The insurance company may require certain security measures to be in place to maintain coverage. If the removal of the security system affects the insurance coverage, discuss this with the owner and the insurance company. Ensure that the owner understands the potential risks and liabilities associated with removing the security system. Document all discussions with the owner and obtain a written approval for the security system removal. If the security system included a monitoring contract, ensure that the contract is properly terminated and that any associated fees are cancelled. Obtain written confirmation from the monitoring company that the contract has been terminated. Before finalizing the deduct, consult with your insurance broker to ensure that you have adequate coverage for the revised scope of work. If the removal of the security system results in a credit from the security system supplier or manufacturer, ensure that this credit is reflected in a deduct calculation. When negotiating the deduct, consider the potential for future cost increases. Include a clause in the change order that allows for adjustments to the deduct if unforeseen costs arise. When documenting the issue, be sure to include photographs or videos of the work that was performed and the materials that were installed. This documentation will be helpful if there are any disputes about the quality of the work or the materials used. If you are unable to resolve the issue directly with the subcontractor, consider seeking the assistance of a construction attorney or consultant. They can provide valuable advice and guidance on how to navigate the legal and contractual issues involved. It's important to remember that the goal is to reach a fair and equitable resolution that protects the interests of all parties involved. Be prepared to compromise and to work together to find a solution that works for everyone. If the subcontractor is a member of a professional organization, such as the National Electrical Contractors Association, consider contacting the organization for assistance in resolving the dispute. Many professional organizations offer mediation or arbitration services to help resolve disputes between members. If the project is subject to a performance bond, consider notifying the surety company of the dispute. The surety company may be able to assist in resolving the dispute or may be required to pay for any damages that result from the subcontractor's breach of contract. When reviewing the contract, look for clauses that address consequential damages. Consequential damages are indirect losses that result from a breach of contract, such as lost profits or increased financing costs. The contract may limit or exclude consequential damages. Consider the potential tax implications of the deduct. Consult with a tax advisor to determine how the deduct will affect your tax liability. If the deduct is significant, it may be necessary to adjust your accounting records to reflect the change in scope. If the project is subject to a government contract, be sure to comply with all applicable regulations regarding changes in scope and deductions from the contract price. Government contracts often have specific requirements for documentation and approval of change orders. When communicating with the subcontractor, be sure to use clear and concise language. Avoid using jargon or technical terms that the subcontractor may not understand. If possible, communicate in writing to avoid misunderstandings. If you have a meeting with the subcontractor, prepare an agenda in advance and stick to it. Take detailed notes of the meeting and distribute them to all participants afterward. When negotiating the deduct, be sure to consider the time value of money. $1 received today is worth more than $1 received in the future. If the subcontractor is offering to pay the deduct over time, factor in the interest that you will lose by not receiving the money upfront. If the project is being financed, be sure to notify the lender of the deduct. The lender may require you to adjust your loan documents to reflect the change in scope. If the deduct is significant, it may be necessary to renegotiate the terms of your loan. When documenting the issue, be sure to keep track of all of your expenses, including attorney's fees, consultant fees, and other costs. These expenses may be recoverable if you are successful in resolving the dispute. If you are unable to resolve the issue through negotiation or mediation, consider filing a lawsuit in court. A lawsuit can be expensive and time-consuming, but it may be the only way to protect your interests. Before filing a lawsuit, consult with an attorney to determine the best course of action. When reviewing the contract, look for clauses that address indemnification. Indemnification is an agreement by one party to protect another party from liability. The contract may require the subcontractor to indemnify you for any losses that you incur as a result of their breach of contract. Consider the potential impact of the deduct on your relationship with the owner. If the owner is unhappy with the way that you are handling the dispute, it could damage your relationship and make it difficult to get future work. Do your best to keep the owner informed of the progress of the dispute and to address their concerns promptly. If the owner is willing to participate in the negotiations with the subcontractor, it could help to resolve the dispute more quickly and efficiently. When negotiating the deduct, be sure to consider the impact on your overhead and profit. If the deduct reduces the amount of work that you are performing, it will also reduce your overhead and profit. Be sure to adjust your prices accordingly. If the subcontractor is offering to perform additional work in lieu of paying the deduct, carefully consider the value of the additional work. Make sure that the additional work is something that you need and that it is worth the amount of the deduct. When documenting the issue, be sure to keep track of all of your communications with the owner, the subcontractor, and any other parties involved. This documentation will be helpful if there are any disputes about what was said or agreed to. If you are unsure about how to proceed, seek the advice of a qualified professional. A construction attorney, consultant, or other expert can help you to navigate the legal and contractual issues involved and to protect your interests.